I think it's great.
Yes, it is.
I did monitor for several years, and I
Is that off the air?
recommended Davey Wayne. He replaced me.
Yeah.
Is that off the air now, monitor?
I think it is, yeah.
I have no idea.
Jim started in radio when Mark Coney was his engineer.
Funny.
30 seconds.
A lot of commercials, Steve. You must be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Steve Allen Show, and once again, here's Steve Allen.
Chatting with, as we told you before, Jim and Henny Backus. It's no wonder that, as you were saying, Henny, you guys have turned out 5 books. It would probably take another 5 at least to cover all the interesting ground based on your experiences. What was the first step for you, Jim, getting into show business? What was your background at, say, 20?
Let's see. I was in show business before that. I was living in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Very square family. My father was quite an affluent guy. They hated the idea of me being an actor.
What did they want you to be? Businessman, banker?
Tycoon.
Tycoon.
Instant
Okay.
tycoon.
And eventually you became one.
Never planned it that way. And so there's a Cleveland Playhouse. It was a very good, still is a very fine place.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing a play called ad-libbing, and I went down to apply for a job, not knowing the only jobs were 90-year-old rabbis, which I promptly got.
Ah, great.
Had to let my crew
And you
cut.
were a teenager at the time.
Yeah, and I hung around there, and then there was stock companies were still going, and I did that, and then finally my old man couldn't stand anymore, and he shipped me off to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York.
Great.
And from there it just was ups and downs. I went back. It's been a very kind business, but it's been rough too. If you went through the Depression, you could go through anything.
Yes.
All of that is in the book, the adventures he had making it on Broadway and how rough it was.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it always is. I did a show last evening. We were talking earlier on the program today. Sid Caesar and his son, Rick, who's a physician, and my son, Steve, was also a doctor. 4 of us talked about humor and healing. And one of the many interesting points that came up is that very few actors or actresses are pleased when they hear about the possibility that one or more of their children might want to get into the business. Generally, the parents' reaction is, "Oh, I hope you're mighty sure," because the reason,
rough.
yeah, it is
It's
very
rough.
They
know.
The average person, when they think of acting, they think of stars. They think, "Oh, how wonderful it must have been to be Clark Gable or Jimmy Dean or Donald Duck or whatever." But at any given moment, as you know, what is it? 80% of the members of the Actors Union are out of work. Something like that.
May I tell you a story about Hank Fonda?
Mm-hmm.
He was a friend and neighbor.
We have about
He used to
30
stop
seconds.
by when
30
he was
30
through
seconds for this story.
And one day I was giving him a bit of a drink, and he was very depressed. And I said, "What's the matter, Hank?" He said, "We finished the picture. I'll never work again." I said, "You too, Hank?" He said, "You think I'm bad? You ought to see Jimmy Stewart." How about that?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, all actors,
only-
all humans have degrees of insecurity. We'll be back after this message.
We'll come back and we'll talk some more with Jim and Henny Backus and more in just a moment on The Steve Allen Show on the NBC Radio Network.
You can't hear this here?
Huh?
This will be on the air here?
No.
No,
Every place but.
he hasn't got a local station now.
Welcome back to The Steve Allen Show. Our guest this hour, Jim and Henny Backus. Herb Sargent is with us. This is Mark Simone, and here again is Steve Allen.
Thank you, Mark. Jim, one of the aspects of your career that I envy you, I did a sketch once with Ed Wynn, but that was just a one-shot thing. You had the pleasure of working with him and knowing him over quite a long stretch.
Yes, well, he was, I call him my surrogate father.
Mm-hmm.
He, through Keenan, of course, his son who passed away. It was a wonderful, my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, I used to go and watch do his radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally got on it, but mostly the advice he gave me. He said, "You're going too many characters." He said. The fellow that goes and the rich boy. He said, "But you should get one character and stick with it." He said, "Because you'll never be a star." And he was right.
It's fascinating.
He said, "Bob Hope is Bob Hope.
Yeah.
Steve Allen is Steve Allen." The list goes on. Eddie Cantor is Eddie Cantor.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the fellas are.
There is something to that advice. On the other hand,
well, Frank Morgan always played the same kind of half-loaded rich guy.
Right. But on the other hand, if you have that variety of ability, as you did and as other character actors and comic actors do, you're powerless. I mean, if you can do 9 things, you have to do them, you know, and you just...
Yeah.
If you had just narrowed down and done nothing but Mr. Magoo, that wouldn't have been a great thing to
what
do
he
anyway.
meant was to make yourself identifiable
Yeah.
for one character.
Sure. It is, on the other hand, to defend Wynn's argument, it's true that most of the... I mean, Clark Gable, as we were saying, is always Clark Gable. Jimmy Stewart's always
One time
Jimmy
they put
Stewart.
him in a costume and he bombed.
Yeah,
With
interesting.
Parnell.
Parnell, that's right.
Yeah, he went right on his took it.
About the only actor I can think of who ever was the exception, let's say, to prove that rule, was Paul Muni, who had the ability to do any kind of acting, could play any kind of role.
But it looked like the
Paul
same
Muni
guy, only with
came
more
through.
hair.
What, darling?
You look like Paul Muni, but with more hair.
Yeah. But
He altered his beard.
A furry Paul Muni.
Because he didn't do much except growl a lot.
Yeah, but he didn't get the credit that, as I say, the Jimmy Stewarts and the Tyrone Powers and the Earl Flynn's did, because he had more talent than they did in a certain sense. He had a wider canvas, so to speak.
But we don't know that, do we?
How do you mean?
I mean, how can we tell if they've just stayed with one character, being given a chance to do another character? They might have been greater than Paul Muni.
Might. You can't argue against might.
No,
but,
can we?
Take Fred Allen. Even when he did one long pen, the Chinese detective.
Yeah, it was always Paul. It was always
You knew it was Steve. I mean,
was kidding.
Fred. Yeah, right.
You knew it was Fred Allen.
Like Johnny Carson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's kidding.
When he does Ed Fern or whatever it is, but you know it's Johnny Carson.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And but those multi-talented guys like on Sid Caesar's show, they were fantastic.
Oh yes.
And they did it without a net.
Yeah, that was the premier.
I was reading about the bit where Howie Morris grabbed Sid Caesar's leg and he carried him around for the rest of the show.
Yes,
Remember
the single funniest sketch in TV comedy history, a satire on This Is Your Life.
This Is Your Life.
Yes.
Brilliant, brilliant stuff.
that?
Funny.
We were talking about it last night with Sid, as a matter of fact. How did you guys meet? I've discovered an odd thing, before you answer the question. You probably will remember, you've been together so long and you'll live such dramatic lives. But over the years, when I would ask most husbands and wives, do they remember the exact moment they meet, I was originally surprised, but eventually not, to hear the answer, no. They remember they were both going to the same high school or both at the same church or whatever, but they don't remember the moment of their meeting. Do you?
Yes, I do, and so does Jimmy. But do we have time?
Yes. We have a few minutes.
Well, I had a studio at the Royalton Hotel in New York. I'm a sculptress, and I was casting a bust of Orson Welles for CBS.
Mm-hmm.
There was no room service and no restaurant. And Herman Levin lived down the hall.
And he was?
He produced My Fair Lady and so forth. He called and asked me if I'd make him some soup.
Mm-hmm.
I had the bathroom rigged as a kitchen, so I
He
made
had a
some
cold.
soup. Yes, that's right. He had a cold. And I made the soup and sashayed down the hall, covered with plaster, knocked on the door, and the door was opened by this handsome young man with the long eyelashes. And I said the immortal words, "Here's the soup." And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he shut the door, and he turned to Herb, and he said, "Who's the sexy-looking bricklayer?"
I love that.
That's no bricklayer. She's a sculptress and an actress and a model, and that's why
funny.
she has so much soup there. And Jim said,
we met funny.
Wait a minute, darling. And Jimmy said, "Let me bring back the bowl," which he did, and we have really never been apart since.
Well, that kind of a meeting would be remembered, yes.
Met over a bowl of soup.
Or a bowl of clay or whatever you were working with.
I'm beginning to sound like Edwin, even though I don't want to.
Not a bad thing.
Not at all.
No.
All right, on with it.
Who's that?
Did you ever work, I noticed reference to George Jessel here. Did you ever work with George?
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Yes, somewhere along the way. He killed me so,
Yes.
without intending.
We did a lot of
Ever heard
talk
Jack
shows with
Jack
him.
Carter's imitation of
Oh,
him?
gosh, that's the
Yes.
funniest
It
thing.
is funny how he defected from a road show.
No, from a bus and truck company.
He defected.
They defected. They walked out in the middle of the night to get out of playing anymore.
Ah,
Funny story.
yes.
And Jessel had on the general's outfit with all the medals,
Yes.
which he's not entitled to wear.
In late years, he altered his personality, certainly, to some
Yes,
extent.
indeed.
He had more medals than General MacArthur.
Yes, he did.
How did the connection with Gilligan's Island get started?
Well, go back to Sherwood Schwartz again. He had this idea of these people marooned on an island, and he cast it very well, and it came up to Thurston Howell.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done the Alan Young show with him, and had worked with him on I Married Joan.
He wanted that same
character.
ultra-rich, snooty
So
society fellow.
He said, but we can't afford Backus, which at that time was very flattering. But they never asked me. And when finally I said, yes, I like the idea, the hell with the salary. It was quite good, and also the prospect of shooting it in Hawaii. And I thought it was very funny, despite what other people had said. And he said, if you come with us, we're leaving tomorrow on the plane for Hawaii. He said, I promise you I'll rewrite the script. Because the menu, the wine list was a bit bigger than my part. And we sat in the
At the beginning of it.
Yeah. We sat on the plane, and he was true to his word, and started a very, very fine relationship. You know, Gilligan's Island is an easy target for Johnny Carson and so forth. But I think it's a much maligned show.
I want to get more of your
It's
comments,
funny.
and you too, Henny, on that. There are two shows that people often lump together in talking about situation comedy and this particular aspect of it. And Jim, you feel free to comment on this too if you'd like to, because you know a heck of a lot about comedy. Beverly Hillbillies and Gilligan's Island. If there was ever a professional critic that liked them, I haven't heard about that.
That's right.
But the American people loved them. They were
two of the
big.
most successful shows in television
Exactly.
history.
The return to what's it called? The
Return to Gilligan's Island,
which we did, getting supposedly off the island, and we shot it down in the harbor. And not only did the boats accompany, but the whole harbor turned out with the
May I
fire
say something,
hoses
Jimmy? It had more of an audience than Roots.
Oh, yes.
Higher rating. I mean the special.
Oh, the special, I see.
The first special.
But even with or without that special, a giant
yeah.
success story. Never any doubt about that. The business would love to have many more such success stories. Who wouldn't?
Steve, when you read about Gilligan's Island, and forgive us our digressions, you'll find out the truth about what happened to the money.
Well, why it was
We're not
canceled.
going to tell you
it's a
now.
showbiz saga. I mean, all the cliches
Yeah, well,
of
I'll get
life
to that.
in the advertising agencies and
How it got on.
Jim Aubrey riding in the plane with me.
The whole thing was a freak.
I'll read that part of the book first because, oddly enough, it's not odd, but I'm writing a book about some historical reminiscences, about television, autobiographical reminiscences, and for that reason, I can assure you, I'll be getting into this very evening.
Steve, you're to steal. If you have my permission.
No. Any quotation will be with all due credit.
Pay back for those jokes we stole in 1947.
But yes,
I did some research on that one question about those two shows. Now there have been, let's just ad-lib a number, 100 series over the last 30 or 40 years of TV history that the critics knocked, and generally, partly because of that, and partly because, let's say, they weren't all that great, they went off after a few weeks or months or maybe 1 year, or they had low ratings, and that you'd figure that they weren't terribly good. But in this case, the critics knocked these two series, and yet they were number one. I wrote a letter the other day, in fact, to Sherwood. I have to call him back on that.
I think we lost our line to California all of a sudden. Not only that, I unplugged my headphones at the same time. But we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk some more on The Steve Allen Show on the NBC Radio Network.
Debbie, what's the situation? At what point did we lose the line?
I don't know that we did lose the line. I don't know what he was talking about.
Oh, can you make a quick check with Dick or somebody?
Yeah, I am.
I don't know why the muscles are aching more today.
Well, get up and move. You've been sitting too long.
Yeah, want to walk around for a minute?
Why don't you walk around a little bit, Joe?
Ralph?
Help him up there. Thank you.
Oh, boy. Steve, this is Ralph.
Nice to see you. commercial will run about another minute or so, I think. Oh, you mean after that?
Yeah.
About 10 minutes or so. Seems to be good now? Okay.
Well, welcome back to the Steve Allen Show. We've lost Steve Allen and Jim Backus, and what we're getting from California is this,
season,
which is somebody else coming from somewhere. Oh, there we are.
Yes, I was just told a few seconds ago we're back on the track here now. I should explain to our new listeners and to our guests that we're on the Heathkit network here. They put it together every morning with some Dixie cups.
You're coming in by satellite, and there was some confusion at the satellite company. They started feeding us somebody talking quickly in Cuban.
Ah, well, you may be picking up some modern history.
Yeah, tell them to give us some cigars.
I don't remember, well, we have no way of knowing at what point in the conversation the train was sidetracked, Mark. What were we talking about when everything went sideways?
Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island, yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll just quickly get back to the question. I got a letter from Paul Henning in response to one I'd raised, asking the same question. Paul, how do you account for the fact that every critic in the country, well, 312 critics, whatever, they all put your show down, and yet it was number one in about 20 minutes and stayed there for years and made you a very even richer man than you were to begin with? And even he can't explain it. He liked the show. He liked it better than the critics did, obviously. You know, we all have that self-interest in whatever we create. But he said, I really cannot explain it. It's just...
Sure, it stands by it. I admire him.
Mm-hmm. I think the
He'd never
public
back down, in the company of his so-called peers.
Sure.
It's a hell of a funny show.
Don't you think the public has more power than they think they have?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, I think they should know that. They can save a show.
Very true, if they're there in sufficient numbers. There have been a lot of instances.
Well, they saved Gunsmoke.
Mm-hmm.
That went off and went back on.
Sure. There have been a number of instances. It's very difficult to figure the public out. Any politician who could do that would be the king of the world forever.
Yeah.
They will surprise you. They surprise you at the box office. They surprise you in the bookstores. They surprise you every day.
And politically.
Yes, that's my very point, yeah.
Yes.
You never know what, democracy is nice. It's a lot better than dictatorship, but you can't trust, you can't make strong predictions, let's put it that way.
I think critics are jaded, too, don't you, Steve?
Yes.
They see too much television.
Yeah.
You know, they may look at 10 or 12 cassettes a day.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally
they got to be punchy after that.
They got to be punchy.
Yeah.
And there's such good shows now like Frank's Place.
Great
There's certainly room for that. And the other one...
30-something.
30-something.
And yet I've been told, I don't follow
I imagine they have low ratings.
I would think the ratings are not
They're climbing.
And
They're
good.
climbing.
George C. Scott was dead last in out of 55 television shows.
Which show?
Well,
George Scott.
And it was a good show, Steve. Did you see
a great
it?
show, but isn't he on the Fox setup?
It's off. It's off.
Oh, I see, yeah.
It's been
But they
canceled.
didn't have enough stations to get a good rating.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
They had 8 stations and 3 gas stations. I think. Nothing made sense on that. But anyway, as I say, even Sherwood and even Paul Henning, the creators of these two very successful series, have never solved that mystery.
And I don't think the writers get enough credit, because may I tell you, not to write a situation comedy every week is murder.
It is indeed.
With a plot, I don't know how they do it. I marvel at them.
Even if yours was the only situation comedy on the air, it would be a good trick. But when at the same time, there have been hundreds, and at any given moment there are, 30, 40, 50, 60 shows on the air, and you don't want to do the same story about can I borrow the keys to the car, Dad, every week. It's quite a challenge to come up with new plot lines. And
watch it on holidays. They all have the same plot, generally. Mm-hmm. Christmas, Easter.
Yeah. Never thought of that. Interesting point. Any thought I'd never had before is an interesting point.
No, I think one of the best shows on the air is Magoo's Christmas Carol.
Ah.
A classic.
Why didn't they ever make an album?
Is that rerun every Christmas?
Every Christmas.
Yeah, they never made an album. The songs are wonderful.
Julie Stein and Robert Merrill, the music in that is marvelous.
My goodness.
I can't figure out why
it's amazing.
Now that sounds like a natural for a cassette, a video cassette.
Yeah, well, it is. It is on cassette.
It is by far the best Christmas show.
That is great.
And I say that not because I was on it.
I know it's on cassette because we don't get any money.
Ah.
Nobody does, do they?
Yeah.
You're
No,
supposed
the
to
actors don't. Not from cassette, do we?
I don't know.
No, Steve, we don't.
Huh. Well, there's another reason for another strike.
I was just about to say that.
Go ask someone on the picket line.
Call your agent.
We don't get any from cable either.
That's funny. We've had frequent updates on the writers' strike because most of our guests, we book a lot of comedians, but an even greater number of comedy writers So generally the last week or two, a lot of our guests have just rushed in from the picket line, put their sign down, and talked
I love
to
they
us.
come to the picket line in Mercedes-Benz.
Yes. I guess we were saying the other day it's hard for the public to develop sympathy for guys who are already doing very well.
Yeah.
But still, fair is fair, and if let's suppose you're making, I'll ad-lib some arithmetic, as a writer you're making $100,000 a year. I take that because it's a nice round number. You're not going to get much sympathy. But on the other hand, if something you created made $1 million a year for your producer, then the question is...
For Sam Trump, whatever his name is.
Yeah, whoever.
Sam
Then the
Trump.
question is, why don't you get a little larger slice of that pie because you created it? You know? So
That's right.
That's what they're arguing
Or
about.
some slice. Sometimes you get nothing.
Yeah. To pick up a question that we didn't resolve about 20 minutes back, we were talking about a great comedian named Joan Davis. Did she ever have any children?
Oh, yes. When they moved to Beverly Hills with the $15,000 and bought the house, she was pregnant.
Ah.
She was married to a man named Wills, and she naturally named her daughter Beverly Wills.
After Beverly Hills.
That's cute. How many
Beverly
children-
played her sister on the show, remember? That was her daughter.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
His
There's a-
daughter burned to death, didn't she? In the
Yeah.
fire?
No. Her mother and her
Oh.
2 grandchildren
That was it.
burned to death in the fire in Palm Springs.
Oh, dear. It's,
And so did Beverly.
Terrible. No, Beverly didn't. She died.
that's sad.
No.
Oh.
Well, you have in this book, Forgive Us Our Digressions, published, as we mentioned earlier, by St. Martin's Press, you have a wealth of stories. And I see here that you have this separate chapter titled Gilligan's Island, starts on page 174.
I didn't
for you-
know that.
So you folks who have already got
Yeah.
your own copy. And that's going to be the one I'll read now. There was a gentleman named Jim Aubrey. I never had any trouble with him, as a matter of fact.
I never did either.
We did business together, but apparently he was a little on the cranky side to some of his associates. So somebody named him the Smiling Cobra.
He was not mean to girls.
Oh,
Oh, no.
There's something to say for that, too, I get.
That's right. They wrote The Love Machine about him.
Ah,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. He was a time salesman at the CBS station here in town back in the late 40s. That's so far back Jim and I go. But there must be something wrong with me because there are some people whose reputation is terrible. And
Like I got along
I've
with-
generally gotten along with all of them.
Me too. I got along with Otto Preminger.
Really?
I made a picture with him in August in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Tempers were running very high.
Mm-hmm.
Our security guards were carrying rifles, in fact.
Literally?
Yeah, it was a very, very hairy situation.
What was that movie?
Hurry Sundown,
Ah.
with Jane Fonda and Michael Caine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Diane Cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Diane
Carol.
Carroll.
Excuse me.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a tyrant, but he was great to me.
Mm-hmm.
He'd yell at me like hell on the stage. Get back to the motel after a harrowing 45-minute ride, no air conditioning. I found a bottle of champagne,
Ah, how nice.
and he was very sweet. And when the picture was finished, we went to dinner with him one time at the Trader Vic's or someplace, and he was a very lovely man.
I wonder if it's so simple, since a factor that you and I have in common is we do funniness for a living. Maybe cranky people get along with
Yeah.
funny people better than they get along with straight folks. Maybe that's all there is to it.
Well, Gleason could get pretty cranky.
Who?
Gleason.
Yes, not many people knew that.
Defer to him. He wrote the
The
book.
authorities
Yeah.
right here.
Yes. What's the name of your book on Jackie?
How Sweet It Is.
Ah, when did that come out?
That's been out a couple of years now. It's just about to be sold to CBS for Movie of the Week.
Oh, terrific.
Isn't
Now
that
that's
great?
a challenging assignment. Who the heck is going to play Jackie when his image is still so clear in our minds?
There is an actor in this town, a comedian. Yeah, in fact, I'll bring him over and put him on the show with you sometime. He does Jackie Gleason. He looks like Jackie
Oh, how
Gleason,
fortunate.
and he moves like Jackie Gleason.
No kidding.
And he
What's
is
His name's
name?
Joe Alasky.
And you said he was a good actor, Jim.
Very good actor. He's on a sitcom now called Out of This World with Donna Pesco.
Then you're very fortunate because just from the regular pool of even great actors, that would have been a very tough thing to cast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had originally sent the book to John Candy,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
wrong, if I may
Yes,
arbitrarily
yeah.
say. He would not be right.
and his agent came back and says, well, he only makes movies. He gets $3 million a movie, and
Yeah.
he's not interested.
Yeah, good luck to
And
him.
then I found George Slaughter touted me on this
Oh,
young
really?
young comic. Yeah.
Ah.
Terrific.
Great.
Yeah, there was, as you don't have to be told since you wrote the book, and Jackie lived the life, there's enough there for about 4.5 movies at least.
Boy, I'll say.
A lot
Jeez.
of stuff to chew on. I did a show, was doing a show a couple of years ago, for about 2 years, and in one occasion we went out to the place where Jackie lived as a kid, 10 or 11, 12 years old kid. Mm-hmm. It was not a very fancy neighborhood when he was there, and it's even in worse shape now.
Oh, yeah.
But
Where was it? What city?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
358 Chauncey Street.
Yeah.
Oh, they really used that, didn't they, on the skit?
They used the same kitchen
Mm-hmm.
Really?
and the same address on the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
As the one he
What
lived
section
in.
of Brooklyn is that?
I don't know what it's called.
Bushwick.
Bushwick.
Looked like World War III.
Oh, boy.
Very rough neighborhood to live in. It's tough. Yeah, that was, I think, Gleason and Carney as a team, they were both giants separately too, but as a team, I think they were the Laurel and Hardy of TV.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
They're,
Yeah.
Very often, when you get two strong people individually, you don't just get A plus B, you get A plus B plus some mysterious C that's more, as we say, than the sum of the parts. And they had that wonderful relationship.
Isn't that what they call chemical in our business?
Yeah.
Right.
Chemistry.
You can never plan it.
No.
You can't count on it.
We're just about out of time.
Well, I couldn't even plan or count on that either. But thank you, Mark. The 49 seconds of the show you missed was the best part of all, but better luck next time. Anyway, we recommend the book to you folks. Forgive us our digressions by Jim and Henny Backus.
We'll come back and wrap things up in just a moment on The Steve Allen Show on the NBC Radio
Do
Network.
that all over again.
Well, that was a fast 3 hours.
Boy, I'll
Wasn't
say.
it, though?
You do this every day?
5 a week, yeah.
Is this the final hour of the show?
This is the final hour of the whole series. I've gotten too busy to do it anymore.
No kidding. And it was,
You've just been on the last show. But the reason we didn't refer to it as the last show is because the network is going to be playing about another 2 or 3 months of tape shows. So it would hang that up if we said goodbye forever and then they're still on for 3 months.
Yeah.
But it's been taking about 4 hours of my day, and as a result, I'm now a month late in getting a manuscript to a publisher, and they're getting cranky. So, also, it's been knocking me out of some other good stuff.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense anymore.
But I read that story in the New York Times. Geez, they just raved. I've never read such a rave review.
Was it a weekend feature or just a daily?
No, it was during the week.
Boy.
Yeah. It's got to be. I'll tell you when it was. When I was doing radio for KMPC, and I haven't done that since the first of the year. So it was before that.
In December then sometime.
I'd say November or December.
Ah. Well, I'll have
You ought to read it because,
I'd love to
geez,
see
I'm telling you.
Have you got it?
I don't think
Probably
so.
not.
No. I remember I said something on my radio show about it. And I thought, geez, as soon as I said that, some local station would pick you up in a minute. Because this is the natural place for it in this town.
But we've taped all the shows, of course, for the stations that needed it that way, and it's a gold mine of funny people. Just about every funny person in the business has been on the show.
10 seconds.
Got them all on tape. It's great stuff. So now you're part of history.
Well, that's it for the Steve Allen Show.
That is indeed. Thank you, Mark. And again, thanks to Jim and Henny Backus and to Jim Bacon and to Bob Einstein and Herb Sargent and all the folks who have been very helpful. And we'll see you all later.
Thanks to our producers, Dick Brennan and Debbie Farr. And thanks to all of you. This is the Steve Allen Show on the NBC Radio Network.
We need the same.
I'll take mine.
Great to see you, partner. Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to get into that.
I'm glad we didn't postpone this till next week.
Yeah.
We're going to have a little party, the unveiling of the book in about a week or two. I'll call you when you come.
Yes, I'd love to. We'll be in Nassau for about the next 10 days. In fact, Jane left this morning, and I'm joining her there
Have a
tomorrow.
wonderful time.
But if we're back by that time, let the office know, and then they'll.
Yeah.
I'll call the office then.
Great.
Yeah, it'll probably be 10 days for the
Terrific.
Are you going down to
Steve was
Paradise
fine.
Island?
Was the show okay,
Yeah.
Steve?
Huh?
Was the show all right?
Oh, it was marvelous.
Oh, I thought it was
You're the
great.
first. You're the first show I've done since.
Ah, there you go.
Steve, you're the first show I've done.
No kidding. Well, I'm honored.
If you get to take a cab at the airport at Nassau,
Uh-huh.
and you look at the cab driver and you say to him, "Gee, you look just like Sidney Poitier." It's his brother.
Really?
Yeah,
No
he
kidding.
drives a cab at the airport.
Fascinating.
His name's Dan. I just saw Sidney yesterday. I says, "Your brother Dan still driving a cab at the airport?" He says, "Yep, still there."
I was getting angry the other day when I was hearing that this new movie, I guess he's got 2 new movies now. First time in 11 years the guy made a picture.
a hell of an actor.
And he's so good. Yeah, and he's such a gentleman, too.